Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos. I'm here with two British fencers, Ben Peggs and Chris Mollard. And today we're going to be talking about Ben's bout against Roman Kuts from Russia in the 2016 Grand Prix in Torino. And this time we're going to have Ben talk about what he's doing and thinking in the bout, and Chris, who is a student of his and has a lot of experience fencing with and against Ben, will take kind of the opposite approach and kind of try to get inside of Kuts' head. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves and then maybe tell us why you picked this bout specifically, and then we'll just start watching. So Ben, you can start.
Yeah, sure. So hi guys, it's Ben here. Thanks very much for having us on. And we kind of picked this bout because for me personally, it was something where I really felt in control of the bout very early on. And things changed obviously quite quickly without potentially giving the game away, so to speak. But this was a kind of big learning point for me, and I certainly adapted my fencing quite a lot from this bout. So yeah, it's an exciting one to watch.
Awesome. And Chris?
So hi, I'm Chris. Ben and I are presenters, or co-founded the Fenced In podcast during lockdown actually, and we've been discussing different ways of training, and one of those episodes was about video analysis. We thought this would be quite a good opportunity to analyse one of Ben's bouts. Ben, who obviously makes last 64s and higher at the top level. And obviously Ben is fencing in this bout, that I thought it could be really good for me to look at what mistakes Ben has made, and how as the opposing fencer I could capitalise on that and try and win the bout.
All right, great. And on that note, we're going to get started.
It was tense, 0-0.
Kind of my idea going into this fight was that, you know, having studied Kuts before, he is a very strong counterattacker, and so I felt quite cagey in the beginning of the fight, not to potentially accelerate too fast, and I was really looking to kind of provoke him into jumping in so I could, you know, do some kind of counter timing action.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's quite strong on his feet.
Very athletic.
Yeah, and very imposing. He doesn't want to move out the way very much. But he's quite happy to be in your face.
Yeah, and for those that may not have realised, he's left-handed and I'm a right-handed fencer, so this was obviously something I had to take into consideration as well.
Do you like that angle better?
Oh, nice.
I think, to be honest, I have a left-handed coach and a right-handed coach. I do enjoy fencing left-handed fencers, and this is a kind of example of the kind of counter-attacking action that I was kind of suckering him into, and using that counter-timing action to kind of hit on the outside line. But yeah, I really enjoy fencing left-handed fencers.
That's quite a hard line to hit, especially, you know, when it's moving out of the way. You obviously had to be ready for that. I would have thought as Kuts that that would be probably quite a high percentage hit for me to get as a counter-attack.
It might be for him.
There's a big kind of shift in foil now, with a lot of kind of angles being made with the point rather than the kind of flicking action that we've seen in kind of generations gone by. There's a lot more angulation of the blade to really fix that point on, and a lot of left-handers have to defend their outside line, because a lot of kind of the Garozzo style attack of this drawing somebody in to kind of pop it on the outside line is very effective these days.
Yeah, there's a lot of line, a lot of trying to stop you from really moving.
Yeah. So this bout was actually in 2016, where like a lot of line came in, and a lot of people, you were using that to kind of help stop the marching attack.
It's a good defense against it.
Yeah, it can really help. So they kind of, for me, it was looking at if there was any close quarter actions, to try and stay as close as possible, and not kind of get out of the way, because he is actually quite rangy for a smaller athlete. I think we're both about the same height, actually.
I'm also noticing that each time you do this, you stay on his weapon side.
Yeah, exactly. So it forces him to have to almost retract his arm completely to kind of look to hit on my flank or under my arm. So if I'd rotated the other way around, it kind of gives him a lot more space to go for preem, which I think a lot of athletes are more natural at, especially left-handers.
Yeah, totally.
Do you feel like you've gone in totally reacting off him from the beginning? Because he seems very happy to just play his game, and you said you wanted to work off counter time, which can be a bit riskier.
Yeah, that was tricky, because obviously with the counter timing, you have to be really ready to pick up that timing, and so you have to be more cagey at the start. And this is kind of the action I'm worried about. Actually, Safin does this really well, this kind of hitting and sweeping across a line in defence. And so trying to also do the counter timing based action when somebody may counter forward or backwards can mean that makes it even trickier. But here I think I accelerated too early with the hand back on the attack, because I was trying to throw in some shorter attacks. But here he kind of drew me into really wanting to accelerate and make a long attack, and that was kind of perfect for him to find that stop hit action.
Yeah, I always say that the primary way that I set up my counterattacks is making the other person want to chase me, and it's once you can get the person to do that, that's the perfect time to hit them.
That's it. If you can get someone to accelerate too early, then you can kind of go for that. With the blade moving away, you can kind of make a closing action. But certainly, again, if the point is traveling away and you can accelerate too early, if you're an athlete that's good for stop hits and longer counterattacks, you can.
And that hit was very different to the one before. He started with the same action, but the execution was different. He went forwards into you. He tried to stay in your face, whereas the one before, as you say, he kind of pulled you in. He reeled you in, and he was in control of that action. But on this one, you were.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see here that I went for a much shorter attack. I really kind of kept the kind of advanced lunge or the step lunge a lot shorter, and really tried to get nice and low to avoid that line. And even here, I realized that any kind of shorter action in the middle that was more direct would be better against someone that's counterattacking. Any real compound action where you're kind of deviating the blade from the target can often leave you susceptible to those kind of counterattacks. So for here, it was trying to keep the point on and just go for a very kind of short, aggressive action, which has worked twice now.
And he kept that one.
This video review feels a bit like I really don't want to lose this hit, rather than I really think I haven't lost this hit.
And the thing is, here he was very controlled with his feet. Was able to really push me backwards and make me feel at that point like I had a great time for a counterattack. Quite lazy from me. I had a lot more piste behind me. But again, we kind of see this sweeping action and hitting very late on the outside line, like we spoke about earlier on, with that kind of angulation, and really made me feel like there was time for a counterattack and very late finish from him.
Yeah, I mean, you got him as his arm was moving. And you got him in a close distance as he was accelerating with his arm moving. So that was good on him as well.
Yeah, really good change of line from him.
Yeah, and did very well to finish.
And I think a lot of fencing, especially in foil, is like giving your opponent execution tests, because if he can't finish with that, you show that that's a safe counterattack that you can do in like a tight situation. But because he can finish with it, you now have to work with that knowledge and do something maybe a little more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Chris and I work together, we've been doing a lot of stuff on late finishes as well, even broken time based actions, a bit like that. But he's quite aggressive towards me now, and I think in parts now, my kind of I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed into the bout. I feel like I can, as Chris said, I don't look as though early on I was playing my game. I feel like I'm opening up a little bit more, feeling a bit more confident and able to play my game a little bit better here.
I like going under the line. It worked again.
I'm trying to catch him on that middle game quite a lot, because he kind of I accelerate early to try and draw him into thinking he has time. He then commits to something, and that's when I can just almost look to close out with that counter attack.
They missed that.
I'm
quite proud of that touch.
On video.
That did go all the way to the back as well.
Yeah.
That's a good example. He's changed tactic. He's tried to be a bit more aggressive and tried something, thrown in a risk that might come off or might not have. But you really punished him on that.
He has. You're right. He's really kind of accelerating his legs, trying to put a lot more pressure on me now. I mean, a 3-hit lead has opened up for me, so he's trying to make me, I'm guessing, feel unsettled a little bit.
He looks for the blade a lot. It's hard to tell on camera whether he finds it. But
he's also, you can tell, someone that does a lot of good quality stop hits because he shows a lot with the front leg in defense. So when he's going back, that's a really nice.
That was nice, yeah.
Sucking me into that short
yeah.
turn.
Yeah, that's a great sweeping. Nice fine low line.
You see in the way he pulls his hand back with that front leg, really making me feel right. Time for preparation. Parry pass. So using counter timing against me there beautifully.
And how are you feeling at this stage? Because a hit like that can really buoy me. If I'm behind, you get some hits feel like they're worth more than just one.
Sure, absolutely. But I still felt in control. I still felt like my legs were strong.
Yeah, if the strategy in general is working, don't be so discouraged just from one hit. Like, if anything, next time I would see that as an opportunity to do a counterattack with a disengage or something.
Yeah. And this is just a tempo hit. This is kind of just finding the timing, feeling the kind of falling short action. And I think the referee seemed quite happy to give it to me, but he did need to go back and have a little check. I mean, it's very tight on the legs.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, he hasn't changed his approach much. Again, he's still, his point is in your face. Strong on the blade. He's not afraid to be a bit closer, but it's obviously not working at the moment.
But again, that was the way he suckered me in earlier on, and that same kind of thing, drawing me into that counterattack way too early. Push, making me feel he's accelerating early with the hand back. There's a perfect opportunity there, but that was a little bit more direct, and then, again, a bit lazy from me.
He reads the distance really well because his feet, he's ready. By the time he's gone for the step lunge, he's at distance here. So when he's advancing, he's really ready. He's just keeping distance, keeping at a distance where he can pull the trigger. And then as soon as he's close enough that he knows he can go direct, he does. And I think it's kind of here that he's ready. It's premeditated.
Yeah, and it's almost that kind of like half-step lunge with that front leg, which kind of I'm expecting at that point to the step to finish. So for him to really overcommit to that action, but actually it went half-step finish, which gave me no time to really squeeze that counterattack in. But this time I'm being more disciplined on my legs and I'm trying my best to get right out the way.
Yeah, and you've lost 2 or 3 hits in that in the 3-meter box, and that's the first time I think you've kind of gone to the end of the piece.
Yeah, and I've been winning a lot in the middle, but losing in that kind of middle section, as you say. Unfortunately, that was a yellow card. I really thought I'd hit with a nice cut over there, with a broken time cut over, but it hadn't quite landed, and I may have distracted the fight, hence the yellow card.
Yeah, it's funny. I usually don't see them card for that in foil. Usually just in saber. Would you?
Yeah.
Would you say that that's an uncommon yellow card to get, or?
I felt that was unfair, purely because I don't think in any way I necessarily exposed myself in a dangerous way. I didn't rotate away from the box. I didn't expose the back of my head. And actually, I didn't really interrupt the fight too much. We were both at quite a long distance by the end of what I thought was the action that had arrived.
Yeah, and he had kind of relaxed as well, so...
Yeah, so I thought it was a little bit unjust, but it is what it is.
Yeah, in Saber, the justification for giving a yellow card for that always is that it's right of way means more in Saber than it does in foil. And so if you are in this situation and you miss, you are taking right of way away from your opponent, and that is a punishable offense, basically. But again, here, it looked like he was pretty surprised by that too. He wasn't like trying to immediately hit you. He just kind of like settled off as well. So, but it happens.
Yeah, I could definitely see you're right in Saber how it becomes much more crucial.
He got lucky there as well, because not only he wasn't really ready to go for it again, but the fight stopped and you were punished.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And that's a lovely touch.
Whoa.
Again, he sells with the front leg so well.
Yeah.
And that's a good angle. I really tried to squirm out the way of that one.
Other than the flick, that was a very Sabre touch.
Yeah. There's been a few of those recently, actually. Great shots being shown.
So you've had a few of those, kind of close quarter preem, you have 2 or 3 goes and there's no light.
Yeah, it's kind of a Richard Cruz-esque kind of style. Keep it nice and close, and it just means that they don't have the time to put a touch on because you're just so close to target and with the keep remising.
Yeah, lots of people do that. Race does that as well.
Yeah, Race does that really well, actually. And the good thing is on this one, he actually missed his first action, so he wasn't able to get it. But
and for the
I'm
third
trying to go
time,
the tempo wave there.
And for the third time, the line went over his shoulder, your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit good. The distance is changing now as well. It's kind of Ooh.
It was a good touch.
Yeah,
That's a fighting hit.
He feels a lot more aggressive.
Yeah, the distance has it seems to be changing from very long to very short in a quick space of time, and I think also I'm also galloping a bit too much. I'm becoming too relaxed on my legs. The hand position's getting a bit bigger. Yeah, so it's the first time he hits me on the back line. I felt quite confident earlier on, and I was kind of losing touches again the warning line, and I felt, okay, I must go back to the back line. I felt quite comfortable there. And then that time he really went through. I think this could be just.
You got a red card for covering? Oh, yeah.
That is a red card for covering. So, but again, if I hadn't had the yellow card, it would have potentially been obviously just the yellow.
That seems very harsh.
With the hands back here, I don't think it comes back in front of target. I think there, where it would have, is defending my other flank.
Yes, I agree with that card.
It's a good call from the referee. It's very hard to spot, actually.
Yes, it is.
Because actually, if Roman Kuts had gone over to do a preem position, he would have hit me on the arm. So
that's what he tried to do. Right there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think that kind of spooked me a little bit in the fight. I felt still in control, and I felt that was the last yellow card was obviously kind of frustrating, and then to get that on top, and then lose a point from it was just kind of adding insult to injury, really.
And he got a card too for covering?
I'm not entirely sure what he got a card for. That's
a weird moment.
No, that's true. I didn't see that he got a yellow card.
Harry, miss.
Yep, he's covering as well.
Remise.
Yeah. Well, at least the referee's being consistent and fair.
It's okay. If you're him, you don't mind. You didn't lose a hit.
Right, yeah. It's a favorable trade.
I think you probably see those in Sabre, don't you? Favorable trades. Ooh.
See, now he's starting to pick up on that timing of that kind of shorter action I'm going for. I didn't want to go for a long compound action because I was worried about his counterattacks.
Yeah.
Now shorter actions, he's picking up that parry riposte on, which is going into the break now at 9-8 down after being up is a little disconcerting, and I think kind of rattled me a little bit.
So what are you thinking about vis-a-vis changing your strategy during this time?
So this is, I suppose, what panicked me, because the idea of the kind of counter timing was really important. Try and push him. He hadn't really suckered too much into the counterattacks that much. He'd actually been quite aggressive towards me. And so I was kind of really struggling still feeling hesitant to go for a long attack because of the counterattack. But at the same time, he's now picking up on my shorter actions. And I think when we spoke to the coach on that point, he was recognizing that the legs were becoming too big, too bouncy, too gallopy in style. And so actually maybe look to actually bring the tempo down of the feet, make everything a little more small and concise. And that might give me some control back and hopefully find some tactical awareness through just playing the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have a coach? Do you remember?
He did. He might have had Nasser Berlin at the time. I can't remember for sure.
So this will be interesting. From 9-8, Kuts was behind for a lot of that period. It'll be interesting to see what happens now. And how quickly the first hit comes along.
Woo!
So this was a complete change of line. I went to shoulder on this one, and I tried to surprise him with a kind of long compound action, which is something that I'd really felt very wary of early on in the fight. But the distance was much better. I didn't start too close. I started out distance, and I was just able to find my target because I got him on the run.
Also, I think it's important to note that while you had a game plan of fencing against someone who was doing a lot of counterattacking, it's important to be able to modify that game plan when it's not working. And you were being very successful in the beginning by finishing shorter, but as you said, towards the end of that period, he started to catch on to that. And so the natural next step of that tactical cycle is to start attacking a little longer.
Yeah, and certainly changed line. I've been spending a lot of my time going from outside line, trying to pull him into a counter-attack, blocking his outside line, and then deviating inside. So it was time to try and change the line. So shoulder seemed the natural progression.
He did very well, actually. It was a good control of distance. Was that called against Kuts?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so I got the non-valid hit.
That's interesting. I feel like that's how that would be called now.
So actually, what I was quite lucky about is I believe, and the referee, as you can see there, is giving a parry riposte for me, finding the blade quite early. Probably in modern day foil, or I say modern, a few years on, that could have been given a kind of prise de fer, a tackle fair for him. But yeah, the referee seemed to think that I found it. And he stands by that decision.
Yeah, interesting. That's very...
It happens.
So you
There
can
are
see
so
a
many...
bit more control on my feet here, you know?
Yeah. And you're holding line as well, actually. You're trying to put him off pushing you so much.
Yeah. Gives me a bit more of control and distance, I find sometimes.
That's something that comes across in your coaching. It's definitely a tactic that we work on, which is, when the distance is open and somebody's trying to march, shut it down a bit, put pressure on, instead of being so passive.
Don't let them develop.
Don't let them develop. I like that.
That's an attitude that I agree with. I do not like when people just go back and let themselves be pushed. Woo!
There's only so much area you've got, and when you're against the back line, you're going to get hit. And again, keeping that kind of close tactic, staying in close, counter parry, and I missed that one because he finds a second counter parry and a third and probably a fourth, and I was just trying to stay tucked in for as long as I could.
What I find interesting, this is something that we work on in our lessons, actually, is you miss the parry, hold it and control it, and then, when the other person just keeps trying to come in, then you've got time to put it on. It didn't work for Kuts.
Yeah, absolutely not. However, that one did. In the middle of the piece in this time, I've been quite successful at finding that kind of timing, tempo, attack on preparation. But on this one, he was actually ready to find the blade. And I was a bit hesitant, and there we go. Caught me really early with the blade. So I think I cheekily tried to think about claiming a tackle fair, but I knew that was against me.
What's interesting is to note what's been working for Kuts and what's been working is in how he's been scoring hits, but also how he's been avoiding hits. So it actually feels like even though you got the last one, when you come in close together and you go for the remises, that's not been your friend. It's actually been working quite well for him, because even though you've missed, he's missed, and then usually the fight stopped for Coracor. Line and counter-attack, more counter-attack set up by line has been working well for him, and a few kind of direct hits, as well as that flick. So there's already a clear image of what kind of 3 or 4 actions have been working for him. He's had 2 or 3 of each one of those. It'd be interesting to see if the last, however many hits go on now.
I think he just has to get it out of the middle of the piece, because apart from that last touch, it hadn't been working particularly well for him. The longer attacks down kind of my warning line area from longer distance that he sets up works usually quite well. Like that would have done. I was just hopefully smart enough to develop the idea that I must continue to take a few extra steps back, not to get caught near that warning line with a silly counterattack.
Yeah, he was definitely hoping to get the distance to that trigger point and then launch.
But see, again, there I tried to finish with a shorter action, and now he's picking up that parry riposte again. So I've kind of gone back from going for the longer compound actions to kind of that shorter, kind of aggressive step lunge. And there, you can see I didn't really bring my back leg up to finish the step. Again, it was almost like a half step lunge, which didn't really give me as much power as I needed. And he was just quite comfortable picking up that parry riposte.
And it's that same hit again. So again, in the repertoire, he's pulled that one out again. So that's one more hit for that, which is, I think, 3 of them.
But then there I went for more of a compound action like I had at the beginning of the phrase. And I just caught off target. I didn't feel quite as comfortable finishing because I really did catch him on the run. I didn't quite get the distance I wanted. There again, short action, good solid parry riposte from him.
That looked like he weren't ready. Actually, he, as you say, solid action, and you were kind of in two minds or trying something else. And
yeah, those middle of the piece actions where I've been kind of going for that lunge or preparation, trying to find that tempo and that timing for the takeover. He sells again with the front foot, making it look as though he's kind of lost the timing of the distance, and then is very cleverly picks up that parry riposte. Deep step, long front foot, suckers me in.
Yeah, the front foot definitely sets this up because it makes it look like he's about to counterattack there.
Absolutely. And a good circular parry, making it look like he's going to go outside line and then coming straight back in again. Really deceiving.
yeah, is that the same again? I couldn't quite see it, but it was that again, parry no, and then nothing happened. So he hasn't lost a hit there.
No, and I kind of, the feet were wrong here on the long combat action.
A little too
and
close.
He managed to bail it quite early, so I kind of had no runway really. A little bit sloppy from me. I kind of feeling a little bit of desperation here, having been what felt like in control, and then matching hit for hit up until about 10-0, and then losing 2 hits on the bounce or 2 hits. Has kind of flustered me a little bit.
And that's the same again. I don't know if it's become a tactic now, but he's stopped the fight before being hit. He hasn't lost anything. And it doesn't matter so much that he hasn't scored because he's up.
So he's recognised that I'm going for that kind of long, fast compound action, and now he's starting to read the timing on that, and he's clearly stepping in quite early. If I could do this again, I'd probably start from longer distance and kind of disguise the beginning of the action a bit better. So this was kind of like something that I'd gone for from the beginning, but I'd gone much more aggressively now. I was looking for that kind of sucker him into a counterattack and make a parry riposte, even though he thinks it's his parry riposte. But yeah, they're making that riposte a flank, which is just off target.
It feels like he's very happy to be more conservative now and sit back. His defensive game is quite good.
And that's it. That's what I was worried about. That is his game. He's an exceptionally good counter-attacking, counter-timing athlete himself.
What can be good, though, even when you're ahead, like, you don't want to take any risks, but it's good to mix it up. If your defensive game is strong, you still need to throw in some attacks and have some variation and sell it so that you can draw the other person in, you can reel them in and go for those hits. Are you watching the score at this stage, or are you just thinking about the next hit?
I'm trying to just focus on like one touch at a time, just slowly get closer to 12 so we can just, chip away at his lead and go from there. That's what. See, this is it. This is the thing that I was worried about, that long compound action. So this time I stayed at good distance, quite long distance, but I accelerated too early. And he started to get a feel for this, and it was a really, really good stop hit. I didn't launch particularly late. Actually, I'm frustrated that I didn't land. I kind of felt the timing was there to make that finish. But it's his strong game.
That feels very unfortunate for you. Again, he didn't particularly get out of the way. He covered the line a bit, but I'd have imagined you'd have put a light on there.
And that shoulder is where I was going for, and it's a risky target, shoulder.
Yes, it is.
It's a small target.
It's only one more hit, than 12-10, but it can start to feel like a big gap.
Oh yeah.
And
so
that's
here's
good.
this counter timing action I tried to deliver at the start. Much more staccato with the leg stop-start, trying to make him feel uncomfortable in that parrying, and then actually that goes right round the back.
Well, it's obvious as Ben is good at flicks.
Or I just got lucky twice in this game. And that's that middle section that I was talking about again. So he's starting to feel flustered now by that touch. And actually that middle game, and there I let him just develop slightly more. So he felt he had that time to push me, and I just closed that high line out really early. And actually I asked the referee there whether he thought that actually there was a pause in the legs from Kuts. But he saw it as my counter-attack, which was fine because it was one line. Trying to just go for a flick flash there, kind of one tempo action, hard and fast, but he's got such a read on that early acceleration.
Yeah, that was a really nice timing to counterattack. Wow.
And a really nice broken timing hit there. Kind of suckers me in again to that early counterattack. How late is that?
Yeah, very.
And to outside shoulder as well. That's almost very Saber-esque. It's almost like going for a flunge and kind of finishing halfway through, and then, very late delayed hand at the end. Here he kind of launches, almost as this is going to go for a flash, and then just pops it on the shoulder.
That looks to me like it's more of a, I need to do something. I need to put something different in here. Yeah, I need to get it in, because we haven't seen one of those. That's a new hit. It's a risk at this stage in the fight when you're only one hit up.
Yeah, it is.
But I wasn't controlling my legs, particularly going backwards. And this is the first time he does a closing counterattack coming in. All the rest have been like on the spot, trying to but this one he really closes the distance and actually contacts me. And this is also the first time in the fight I decided to go for low line. One thing that I really told myself early in the fight not to go for. And it was exactly, he had the early read on it.
So what happened is towards the end, he felt in control, and you were kind of playing his game. You were playing catch up,
and trying to look for any option that I might have available. And as a left-hander, looking to finish to low line and kind of under the arm, that flank area is a really great area to go for. But he's exceptionally experienced at obviously defending that. So that's his bread and butter.
Yeah.
Cool, so I won. That's great. I beat Ben.
Nice, congratulations.
But I think in this fight, what the big learning was kind of, I felt very much in control early on, and so it was kind of trying to get the psychology right, not to think like, oh, I've won, I've got this. This is my game. Every hit as is important as the last, the whole way through, and it just also shows that it doesn't matter how much control you think you have, the other person at elite level is always able to find that pivotal moment.
Yeah. That's why it's so important to avoid thoughts that have to do with like winning or losing. It's just developing the next hit and being very present in what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. It's trying to stay present and not kind of thinking about the past or the future. There it was very much a kind of future thought, which is, oh wow, I'm gonna beat this guy. I'm gonna move into the 32s. It's gonna be great points. This might qualify me for this, that, or the other, and your brain starts to race away from you. So, it was, to me, that became quite evident that and actually watching it, when you look at the way I'm moving, it becomes almost excited and frantic, like a kind of puppy wanting to play and like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And then you see moments where I kind of settle a bit, the control, the footwork comes back. And I suppose one of the developing things from that in my technique was to kind of, at all times, no matter kind of what's going on, try and keep the footwork a bit more controlled, like it had been at the beginning. And also try and look at not necessarily throwing in a short action by delivering a shorter foot action. So like half step lunge, for example, even though it's a perfectly good action, what I was doing there was half step lunge, but almost the back leg was just kind of like flailing into that action. And so it was better to go to complete a step lunge, but go from longer distance. So what I've worked on quite a lot is getting that back leg underneath me to get maximum power into the lunge. You can change the length in which you do it by distance rather than changing the length of the leg action, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. And so you mentioned briefly just now what one thing you took away from that match, which was kind of to do with distance and preparation on the front leg. Was there anything else that you would take away from that, on something that worked really well, something that you'd want to work on for the next time?
Yeah, I think that it's always important as well that, we talk to a lot of athletes about finding times to take a break in the fight, finding times to do your shoelace, finding time to have a fiddle with things. It just gives you thinking time. And that was 4 years ago. And I was obviously a lot less experienced than I am now. I'm not talking being really disruptive to a fight, but just finding moments when you can kind of get that clarity of thought and think tactically. And ultimately, like we said earlier on, is kind of stick to the things that are working. And if they stop working, sometimes create more opportunity on the legs and search for a new one. Don't have to come up with the right answer all the time, but actually by extending the tempos or the length and the phrase of the actions, it sometimes makes it more evident and things come to light that you hadn't seen before. One of the things that we kind of discuss with younger athletes is the idea of just like literally moving up and down the piece, kind of soaking up and then delivering pressure. Because actually sometimes just by that constant movement, the other athlete will become impatient and bored, and they will jump in, and the mistakes will kind of appear out of nowhere. And I think that's what's really important to take from Roman's Kuts' kind of approach to the fight, which is he was very diligent at just working the whole fight and slowly chipping away and being relatively risk averse, but at the same time allowing the opportunities to come to him with those kind of silly counter-attacking actions from me. Okay, albeit great finishes, but he allows the mistakes to develop by themselves.
Yeah, cool. I think that makes sense. And he seemed very clear-minded about what he was going for from the beginning. And it didn't work so much early on, and then it changed, and then obviously the phase of the fight and the opportunities changed because suddenly he was ahead. So the dynamic is quite different. If you can remain in control of that and stay calm with your strong actions and your clear idea, then if the other person is only getting 50% of hits against you, then that's a great position to be in.
And I think it's important to look at where that hits are arriving in the match as well, and what section of the piece, and trying to be visually quite aware of that in your kind of mind's eye of, well, actually, it doesn't necessarily knowing exactly how you're scoring the touches, because sometimes that can be almost too complex in the mind in the heat of battle, but it's also knowing where in the piece you're scoring the touches. Is it that actually every time you put pressure on them, you're scoring down their end of the piece, and every time you're losing touches, it's down towards the back of your piece? So actually it becomes a game of trying to win the middle game and then get on the offensive. And actually it doesn't really matter, let the autopilot take over, but it's just being aware of where you're scoring the touches and let everything else do the rest.
Yeah, I don't know if it was one of your other videos, actually. I heard something about kind of never be hit, never be caught in those, the 3 meter box, because it's just kind of lazy. It's missed opportunity. You've still got room to go back. And if you're in the right situation, you've got opportunity to go forwards as well. That 3 meter box is kind of a dead zone. And you never want to be stuck just inside of that, being hit. If you've done that, if you've been hit there, then you've got to change something.
And actually, since, at the moment in time, what we're seeing in foil as it's progressed since 2016 to 2020 and beyond, is that this kind of, as you say, that 4 meter box in the middle is really important to kind of win that phrase now, because there's a lot more offensive, slow pressing actions going on in foil. And this is something that I've taken a lot from Sabre, and watching almost like Sabre based lessons and choice reaction in the middle of the piece is almost going with an idea of what you want to achieve from on guard ready play, and try and win that phrase. Because the other thing is, if you start winning many phrases in the middle, people then automatically want to get out of that, so they're likely to go back, and that's when you can then develop your game further and impose more actions upon the fight. So from Sabre, foil has learned to control that, as you say, that 4 meter distance, but it's really hard to also go in kind of open eyes. It's a lot of pre-planning and thought that goes into it, and that's why you see a lot of athletes almost going for that action and walking right back to the back of the piece, just giving themselves that thinking time to set themselves up again for that middle part of the piece.
Yeah, in Sabre, if you don't have an idea of what you want to do when you go into the box, you're probably going to get hit. And
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things. I encourage people to fence outside of their own weapon in practice sometimes, because there's a lot of things that you can learn from the other weapons. And I think that as the first zone game becomes more and more important in foil, that's definitely something that foil athletes can learn from, is because in Sabre that situation is less about execution and more about tactics. Because in Sabre it's so easy to hit the person that you have your idea, and as long as you don't execute it terribly, you'll usually succeed in it. So that's something that you can definitely practice the strategy in Sabre and then take that with your execution back to foil.
Oh, completely. And actually,
Yeah.
Chris knows this, having done a little bit of work himself by fencing this. But I actually coach two of the British guys on the wheelchair squad, and in the wheelchair, there's not as much movement obviously as there is in able-bodied, and so the movement comes purely by what you've got in kind of your torso, and for the cat A's, they've got a bit more maneuverability than the cat B's. You suddenly find that still the distance is close enough where decisions have to become much earlier and much sooner, and so getting the idea of getting someone to fall short, or even kind of setting up a parry riposte, or even going for a direct or indirect action, you suddenly find you have many choices, which can make it almost like many branches of a tree, which become all too confusing in the head. And sometimes it's quite good, as you've said, to kind of narrow down those options and look at other footwork strategies like Sabre, or even look at the things like in wheelchair, where they almost go through a wave of kind of like early and very kind of simple based actions. It gets a little bit more complicated, and then it goes back to being simple again, as kind of like the thought pattern progresses through both athletes. It's really interesting, but again, it gives you that understanding that in the middle of the piece, you've got to make that decision. Or as you say, if you haven't got an idea, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get hit.
Yeah, it's really hard actually. I suck at wheelchair fencing. I just can't. Like, they're so strong in the arms actually, and they know exactly where their bodies are at all times. But I find that going off the line, as you say, really hard, because your blades are pretty much crossed already. So, and it's probably is quite like Sabre. Your decision making has to be instant, and it's just commit to one thing or another, and then hope kind of your reactions will take over. Because off the line, on guard ready fence, beat go, on guard off the line, cut over go, try and set up for parry riposte. But again, they're so good at executing everything they do. I just feel like I can't get anything.
Completely. And as you say, with the blade so close, and this kind of refers back to able-bodied modern day foil, which is now we have the kind of attack or fair versus parry riposte, and when you're at that close proximity, any double clash of the blade, you're just you're rolling a dice there. And so you're going to really then become quite definitive on what a really strong parrying action is, what is an attack or fair or prise de fer action. And then I think that athletes have to understand now that when you're looking at modern day foil, there's a lot of offensive based actions going on. So if there's a clash of the blade, again, probably 8 times out of 10, it's going to go for attack or fair. And so athletes have to be very, very, very clear on how they're trying to set the parry riposting action up, and actually holding parries a much smarter thing to do these days, because it's much more evident to the referee. But conversely, if you're going to be taking the fight to the person, go for the blade. If you know there's someone that parries a lot, clatter through it and go for a hit, because again, the referee is probably going to give you a tackle fair.
Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Maybe we can work together in the future. It was really good fun.
Good, I'm glad.
Very good. Thanks a lot. Cheers for organising.
Yeah, be
Thanks,
safe,
guys.
guys.